Mr. Wilkinson, how have you been?
Yeah, very good. I'm looking forward to the start of the season. It's almost on. As I know, the Super League teams have been underway, haven't they? And pretty
Yeah.
sure that at the beginning of March, the academy and the reserves will kick off, and we'll have some busy weekends as well. So, and I thought it was an exciting. I watched Salford on the Friday night, and there was nothing between the two teams, and probably a disappointing result for Salford in the end. I thought they could have snatched it, and then the one between Catalans and Warrington was quite exciting as well. So those are the two British games I watched, and then I just dropped in on a couple of the stuff from down under, but didn't really watch them all to tell the truth.
Well, we will touch on Salford later, mate, but a club that have built really well. Bleasy's got it running smooth, hasn't he? And
Yes, yeah,
and
he
it's
has.
it's not a foregone conclusion when you get Salford home or away now, is it? It's
Well,
always
no,
a tough game.
yeah, and they've got a great reputation for being entertainers as well. So
Yeah.
they do. They've done a job on St Helens, playing like St Helens a couple of times, haven't they? So I think they're building how they're playing and the way Paul Rowley and his staff have designed what they do and how they play. Um, it's really difficult to defend the threats across the field. I know they've lost some fantastic players last season, which they always do. But they sort of they don't, after Friday's game against Leeds, it doesn't like they're going to be missed because it's really the style of play. And how he uses his back rows and go to the edges quite early in a low risk way that teams are going to really struggle to defend against, and they're always going to score lots of tries. Salford this year.
Like I said, we will touch on him later, but sorry to keep going into it. Do you coach a reserves team so it's a smooth transition to first team? Do you try and play a similar to style to Rolls and Kurt?
Yeah, so I spent some time with them both about, there's some key things that they need in there. Obviously, I'm working with reserves, and some of them, are 18 and some of them are 21, 22. But in terms of like their knowledge framework, if you like, they are 15, 16 year olds, in terms of rugby wise, rugby IQ, if you like. So I can't give them the A to Z of what Rolls does, but I give them some of the key things in case they step up. And yeah, and in a couple of Rolls has took a couple for training and having a closer look at them, if you like. So and these are kids that were just playing in the amateur game, 2020, 21. So they've done really well to get through. So yeah, I try to, but there's stuff that they're just not ready for. Why would you give Pythagoras' theory to 11-year-old? You wouldn't.
You wouldn't,
Um,
correct, mate. Yeah, and I imagine, mate, as well. It's they're gonna learn playing academy rugby, and that's what it's for, isn't it? It's a learning ground.
yeah, the reserve standard since the return from COVID has just got better year on year. The lads that are coming through now, they're really back in good condition again. The training, we played Warrington in a friendly at the weekend. They're in 4 or 5 times a week, whereas Salford are just literally part time, two days a week, 2 evenings a week. I've got rural engineers, I've got pizza deliverers, I've got just
Yeah,
everything really. So we're not full time, but we have to compete against them. So we're never probably going to win the competition, but we seem to do really well. We lost 20 players last year to Championship and Championship One clubs,
right.
and some of them had been with us for a couple of years. So we're always going to attract players that have been discarded, late developers, and we're attracting those type of players, and yeah, we're competitive with everybody. And we've got one or two gems in there that like people like Paul have looked at. Josh Rourke, of course, he's just gone to sign Super League for London. So we're doing it, but
Baby steps.
it's funny, just I was thinking about it the other day, John, because we've no academy. I know this looks like they're going to try and get one academy back. They've not had one for a few years, and for whatever reason, when Marwan was there, they collapsed it, and they've been struggling to get one back. But they've got a really good development academy at Eccles College that does well. That attracts a lot of people. I think they run 2 teams, and we get a few players from there. But they're always a couple of, they're always a season off that transition to play at that level. But I think we're attracting players now, John, because we haven't got a succession. Um, there's if I could explain what I mean. If you was at Wigan, and
Yeah.
what was your position, John?
So I was at Witness, mate. So I was a front rower coming through at
Right.
Witness.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So say let's wind the clock back. You're at Wigan and you're in the
yeah,
academy, just about to go into the reserves, and you're a front rower. Well, you've got 3 or 4 young internationals in front of you and 3 or 4 young internationals behind you. You can't all
yeah.
get through. They only want three or
No,
four tops. Because we don't do that, we're starting to attract a lot of people, a lot of talent, because they see there's no succession. Half a dozen good games in the reserves, you could find yourself, making your way into the first team squad because it's such a
yeah,
small squad. So there's some advantages about it. But the other side of it, we probably needed a good academy and scholarship to be competitive in Salford with our junior players, so we don't lose them to Warrington and to Wigan and to Saints, which we are doing at the moment. They're
yeah,
taking them at a young age, so there's some benefits at the top end. Them kids that are 19, 20,
yeah,
we're the first people they talk to about coming for a season and joining us. But
yeah.
the younger ones, we need to be competitive with them. So not having an academy, we do lose them. Does that make sense?
Right, mate. Yeah, yeah, it does, mate. Yeah, there's like you said in it. It's not only like what's already in the academy, is it? It's about lads that thrive at other academies that the bigger clubs can go in and poach, really, isn't it, mate? And
That's right. Yeah,
promise
yeah.
the world to and that because as much as rugby, there's other influences that the bigger clubs can
Yeah,
offer, isn't there, mate?
of course they can.
Unfortunately, yeah. Right, so we'll get back to you. And where did the
Right.
rugby story all start, mate? And how was you introduced to rugby?
Yeah, so like in Cumbria, when I was growing up, the school I was at, they played rugby union in the first 3 years, and then no, so rugby league in the first 3 years, and then rugby union in the final 2 years. But we had, back in the 70s, we had a full fixture list. Do you
Yeah,
know what I mean? Schools were great back in the 70s for sport. So
yeah,
you got a competitive game of football every week. You got a competitive game of rugby league every week. Town teams were flourishing.
yeah,
So it was, I played for Barra Town team. Um, and that's what sport looked like back then. Of course, there was no junior football, John. Some of the older people will probably recognise what I'm going to say. But the church basically runs sport outside school. So you couldn't
okay,
see sport outside school unless you went to a youth club or the boys brigade or the scouts. So I went to a youth club and I saw judo and I saw basketball, I saw table tennis. So that's what sport looked like back in the 70s. But the schools were great in terms of fixtures, and Barra boys would play up to about 5 or 6 games a year.
yeah,
Um, and so that's how I made my way into rugby. Um, and then when I was about 15, 16, the PE teacher at school persuaded me to go and play rugby union at a local club. And of course, the Colts were 19,
yeah,
so and they were a good team, and I was getting in the Colts team as a 15, 16-year-old. So I was always playing with older lads. When I got to my top end, I was starting to get chased by a few clubs. Back in the late 70s, Hull, who were like a really famous team then. Um, and who else was the? I think they were the ones. Wakefield. So when I started to play at rep level, for Cumbria and stuff like that, clubs
yeah.
were looking, but there was always wanting to sign for my hometown club, which was Barra.
I can
Um,
imagine. So I know I bypassed that. So I'll just touch on where you were bought, like where you grew up, family at home. Like how was home life as a kid for you?
yeah, so I was born in Manchester, all right,
Yeah,
and my dad was like a semi-professional footballer and ended up in Cumbria playing, and then we moved to Cumbria when I was about 11. Um,
right.
so all my secondary school life and growing up, I grew up in Cumbria, so in the Lake District. Um, so yeah, a bit of a sad one here, John. But I had 3 little sisters who I had to look after. But when my dad went back on the tools, he was crippled in an accident at work when I was quite young.
Right.
So I ended up being a dad before I was ready.
Yeah,
And so I had to look after my 3 little sisters, get them
right.
to school, get them home. So I couldn't do after school stuff because I had to get them home. That type of
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah,
which I
yeah.
bloody hated, as a as a young, you know.
Yeah.
And, sadly, two of them died during COVID, so that was a bit of a blow.
Right.
And I've ended up looking after their children and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that was a bit of a tough time. But yeah, I always managed to maybe get a training session in once a week and get out and play rugby of a weekend. So that was my life really.
Yeah.
So when I left school, there was a couple of things I could have done. Obviously, like I wanted to be in sport. But back in them days, there was, the only degree that was available was a PE degree, and I didn't have a B in
Right.
science, so I was never going to do that.
Yeah.
So I got in the Marines, and then I got in the police force, and everybody was saying, don't do that. You're going to be a great rugby player type stuff. And I never was, but I went to serve my time as an engineer on nuclear submarines, and it was a chance to leave home. I left home quite young and went off to serve my time as an engineer, and that was really
Yeah.
good. Mixing with a lot of blokes, playing community sport. The industry was thriving then. There was loads of, the town was full of Kiwis and New Zealanders and South Africans, and they all played in the community game locally.
Yeah.
And mixing with all those as a teenager was fantastic. And
Imagine.
yeah, it was. It was great, John.
Yeah.
Being around them all. I wasn't a boozer, and I couldn't have done that. But just being around men and thinking back how well they looked after me when I was 17, 18, just knocking around with them and playing,
Yeah.
And I just filled in anywhere they put me. And then as I got to about 18 and 19, I was probably a key player for them. So they looked after me, and it wasn't long
Yeah.
after that before I signed, really.
Right. Do you
Yeah.
mind if I go back a little bit then,
What you
Stu?
can there. Yeah, there's loads of things I can
Or
point at. You just whatever you want to grab hold of, John.
yeah.
Let's go back there.
So, mate. So you mentioned you grew up before your time there, didn't you?
Yeah,
You were a
not by
second dad,
choice.
mate, and
Yeah,
yeah, but it's a sad situation that you grabbed hold of and done what you had to do. So, did you feel when you were around the blokes, the Kiwis, the South Africans, the Aussies? They're very family orientated, mate, aren't they? So you're
of course.
already well matured,
Yeah,
mature head, young shoulders, aren't you?
yeah,
So
yeah,
did you feel like that probably helped you slip into that family mode with them?
yeah. I don't know what it was. They just, so sometimes it freaked me out a bit, John. Why are these men, groups of men so affectionate about me? Do you know what I mean? And it made me uncomfortable a little bit. Do you know what I mean? But then I get it as well that this, now as time passed, I thought there was nothing but goodwill. Do you know what I mean?
Hindsight's nice, isn't it?
Yeah, and I was the brunt of a lot of jokes. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like puppy, they could kick around a little bit, but then they were always brilliant with me afterwards. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah,
it toughened me up. Do you know what I mean? In terms of like wit, humor, sarcasm. Do you know what I mean? And they would just literally rip into me. Because they were, they were smart blokes that were
yeah,
giving me some banter. But I'm 10 times worse now, John, with the academy players because I've had a good apprenticeship. So, but all of
yeah.
it,
Well,
harmless fun, helped form some character as well, not just by playing sport at a young
yeah,
age against, people much older than me, but like their intelligence as well and their humour left me for dead. And sometimes I was offended, but also it toughened you up in terms of being on your guard all the time, that
yeah.
type of stuff. So, yeah,
No,
I could see now, or even years ago, I knew it was all done in jest and goodwill.
yeah. And it's obviously maturing you in a different way without you
Yeah,
knowing it, mate, because you're picking up
exactly.
mannerisms, attitudes, behaviours, body
Mm.
language, aren't you? Before probably your time was ready.
I mean, when I bump into them and I go back home to Cumbria or wherever I go, and I lived in Australia for 10 years as well. I played over there. We'll get onto that soon. If I ever see him, I saw one on the shore a few weeks ago. Last time I was home in last summer, and he didn't recognise me. And I said I was filling up saying thank you.
Mate, how nice is it that you're grateful though?
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
at the time, you just don't realise, but good
Probably
blokes.
expecting a slice shot off you, a little bareback.
Yeah, I'm still scared of them now. There's a couple. If they walked in the room now, John, I'd stand up.
a little bit of that respect though as well, mate, which I
What's it
think
is, mate?
a
Yeah,
lot of lads don't necessarily get unless they're in,
yeah.
like in my opinion, in a team sport, mate.
Yeah.
It's
I
pivotal and
think,
everything's
yeah,
transferable in it.
yeah, it's really strange. We're talking about, are the young players today entitled? Do they expect more?
Yeah,
Um, I think, I don't think they do. Do you know what I mean? But I don't think they can, um, articulate in the right way words like "thank you." I know what you're doing is good. Do you know
yeah.
what I mean? I think it takes time till you've had a few knocks yourself. You've had some children, and things have happened, and you realise, oh, great, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
I'll pass that
I think,
on. That type of stuff.
yeah, but it's stuff we probably took for granted a few years before
Mm.
COVID, isn't it? And then
Yeah,
it's come now, and it's just it's like catch up sort of thing, in it, with attitude and behaviours, mate. Like
yeah,
people have got probably a little bit loose over that couple of years,
yes, I
and
agree.
that's where they'll get fined out on a Saturday afternoon, and at
Mm.
3 o'clock. It's sink or swim if you've not done the little things right.
Mm.
So when you become like a second dad, mate, how does that affect school? How does that affect your social? Like, how does that affect you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, running them around, picking them up, dropping them off, that type of stuff. Um, Making sure that I remember taking them to school and showing them where the dining room was, a good place to be early on, because the bus arrived early. People
Yeah,
congregate here, that type of stuff. But they already had ready-made friends and groups, so they could look after themselves pretty well. Do you know what I mean? It was just the toing and froing that was time consuming that prevented me from doing after school clubs and things like that, really.
yeah. So when did rugby become a prominent thing for you, mate? And position wise, where did you play? How did you find slotting
Yeah.
in?
Yeah. So it's when I started work, when I started my
Right.
apprenticeship, um, I'd still not really developed a position or anything like that. But I mean, there was no coaching out in those days in the mid 70s. They were just like, no, he's fast, put him on the wing. All right, he can kick, move him to fullback. Or he can beat people, now move him to the key position, 6 or 7. And it was just as simple as that, John. It just moved like that. So over a period of years, I found myself being in the right place. Um, and that's how it was. You know what I mean? They never really taught you much. There wasn't much coaching. It was just like, what are your attributes and where you can fit in. And my journey was like that, really, John. There was no like, you're that size, you go there. It was just literally I turned up and I run past everybody, right? You're on the wing. Um,
Oh, that's fair enough. At least you could run past people, mate.
yeah, then I could catch and kick, and it just went from there. They just started moving me
Yeah,
around and trying me at different
right.
things,
Yeah,
And of course, your friends inspire as well. So I remember signing for one of the community clubs, and they kicked off an under 18 club. And I met the lads at work. So like the engineers would play the shipbuilders.
yeah,
They like the apprenticeship fixtures, and I met a load of lads. And they said, "Oh, we're going to go to a club to play. Do you want to come?" So I went along to a community club and started playing in the under 18s there. And of course, that's where you start to get inspired by your peers. They have a big impression on you, don't you? And I remember
yeah,
one of the lads turning up and in pre-season, and he was in such good condition. I said to him, "Steve, where have you been?" And he said, "Oh, I've been to the gym. I've been to," and it was like, and in those days, John, there wasn't JDs and there wasn't David Lloyd's.
yeah,
There was just iron gyms, the
yeah,
bodybuilder stuff, the army stuff, and they looked after you really well. They knew exactly what rugby player, chins, dips, push, press, squat, and deadlift off you, and will do your own conditioning.
yeah,
50p a week. It was absolutely brilliant. But you could see, the strength and conditioning as a bit was a big part to be a good to fortify your body, to weaponize yourself, to become a good rugby player. So mid 70s to late 70s, I learned about strength and conditioning from playing at a high standard and being around some of my peers who trained hard. So that was the route. Straight away it was easy to see that if I do that, my performance is going to be better at the weekend. So then you became more committed. There was more evenings taken up. I think at one point as well, just before I signed, I was training over dinner time as well. So I'd go and train over dinner time, do my weights over dinner time, because I didn't want to do too much travelling, back from to and fro from the Lake District to the shipyard at
Yeah.
Barrow. So I would train my weights over dinner time, and then I wasn't stressed to get to training over night time, and I'd been on a bit of recovery and try to eat good food, and that's in the 70s, John. I started to intrinsically, if you like, with a little
Piece
advice,
stuff together.
just
Yeah.
start to put the jigsaw puzzle together that makes you a better
Yeah.
rugby player. Of course,
Yeah.
now I'm a doctor of science.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now I teach all that, and now there's books
Yeah.
written about it. But in the 70s, there wasn't, mate. It was just literally,
No.
listening to people, learning from blokes, and away you go about the right time to eat, the right thing to eat, fluids and stuff like that. So even in the 70s, people passed the baton on,
Yeah.
of the right things to do.
So it's mad because you were exposed quite late then, mate, considering how other kids do it. Did it ever feel a lot at once? Because without you knowing, you've got the human touch already, haven't you? The human
Mm.
element of a good coach or a good doctor of science or even a good player, mate, a good specky. You've managed without really probably knowing and not enjoying it, as
Mm.
you said. I've already got that human element, so you know how to deal with emotion, whether
Yeah.
it's good, bad, and you've done it. So was it quite heavy early being exposed into this wide world of sport?
No, not it's just exciting, John. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Being from watching them on the terraces to training and playing alongside them, it was just like, even then I thought, Christ, I don't want this to end. I need to max out every time I'm here. I need to
yeah,
optimize every time I'm here and enjoy and milk it, learn from them. Um, so, and it's one of those things I look for in young players now. Have they got some innate drive? Do they need a push? Or do they just know what they want? They know where they're going with it, and you might just need to tweak them a little bit. And of course, they can have dreams and aspirations above the station, can't they? And you've got to do that in a different way. You don't want to put them down, but you just need to make it everything realistic and achievable. So it's one of those things I look for in a player. Have they got an appetite to live the right life and to train hard and look to improve? I was talking to some this year who big lads that don't enjoy pre-season, John, and I get all that, but they've still got the potential. You know what I mean? And I say, all pre-season is a tool for you to become a better player. It's not going to happen. You're too big for it to happen in the season. Do you know what I mean? Skills will get better and your decision will get better, but the physicality needs to be done then,
yeah,
because you're going to get that much hammer. So pre-season should be your grand final. It's your derby match. It's your Wigan v St Helens. Do you know what I mean? Those times when you train, and that's how I try to incentivize them that this is the time to do it, because you're going to be battered and bruised for 20 odd weeks come
I
March.
imagine, mate. Yeah,
So I
and
try I try to get them to connect with things like that as much as I can. That training is a tool to become a better player. That's all it is.
yeah, and it should be easy to understand from a guy like yourself when sacrifice was proper sacrifice, mate, wasn't
Yeah,
it? Like back
yeah,
when you were doing it, the
yeah.
dinner times, the travelling back and to like. I appreciate at the minute Salford's part time and it's in its infancy in that structure, like you talked about before, but it's still, like you said, a great opportunity to mix it with the best, isn't it? And
Mm.
just see where your standard is. You might
Yeah,
not be a world beater, but you'll know.
yeah. I mean, the program we give them, I know we're only in twice a week, and the 2 hours we're in, they'll get education in terms of, how to be a good athlete. They'll get strength and conditioning, they'll get skills. But there's also stuff to do in some of the days in between that they have to do on their own, and then we monitor them in terms of like their well-being, their mindfulness. So it's quite a good program for a player to embed all the things that's needed to become and make it at the next level. All right. And if they're not doing that, they haven't got the Salford DNA. Do you know what I mean? So, nobody's coming to help them, John. But
Yeah,
everything's
yeah,
there, all the intelligence is there, the program's there, the advice is there, the tools are there. They've got to really make the most of it. And some of the stuff they have to do in the free time. you know,
Well, you can take them to the well, but you can't make them drink, can you,
there you
mate?
go, mate. There
Yeah,
you go. Yeah.
yeah. So you mentioned you play both courts. So how
Mm.
did you find the intricacies of one from the other? And did you enjoy both courts?
I didn't really play rugby union a lot. It was just like pretty quick, really, before I moved into rugby league. So yeah, it was just like a 2 or 3 seasons, and just a brilliant experience. But then when I met the lads at work and they were playing, they're all rugby league players, and I was friends with them, sharing every day with them. I thought, that's it's all moved into rugby league pretty quickly, really.
And when the time come to sign, mate, who showed interest? What was the conversation like? And was it
Yeah,
old school where you go and meet them in like the pub or the club and that instead of through agents and stuff?
yeah. I think I was playing for a coach, a guy that, or the chairman of the club, and he played at Hull. All right,
Right. Yeah.
and he pushed us that way. I think Arthur Bunting was the coach at the time, and I'd met him. Um, and in and around the same time, Barrow were becoming very interested. And they asked me to play in a trial game, and I went up to Workington, scored a couple of tries, and things happened really quickly then because in the bar afterwards, Workington offered me a contract straight away, and on the Wednesday, I was in the Barrow boardroom signing, and it was just like that really. So, um, you know, 2 weeks. 2 weeks earlier. I was speaking to Arthur Bunting. Then I was playing for a trial for Barrow in the A team up at Workington. We got a win and I scored a couple of tries. Got offered a contract from them, and they had me in the. They had me. It was a home game. I can't remember who they were playing Barrow, but the head coach invited me down for the day to be in the dressing room and have some food and things like that. And I said, we're going to put an offer together for you Wednesday. Come down such and such a time. And off I went, and the job was done. I got my
Right.
dream, playing for my
So
hometown.
you talked, sorry, mate. So you talked before about you've gone from watching on the terraces. They're probably idols, mate, weren't they?
Yeah.
And then next minute, there's a jersey up that you sat under next
Mm.
to him. How was that?
Yeah, it's a wonderful experience, and it's like one of my friends who I grew up with at school. I think he signed at about 17, 16, 17, and he was ripping it up in the old first division as a centre, and that inspired me. I thought, and it was just great to get back in the dressing room with him again, and in and around some of the kids that I played with and against in the local league, and they're all in there. Um, so it was nice to be all around all those again, and of course, then some superstars that. And a couple of them bonded with me quite early on and teased me a bit. I've got a funny start. So people, some of the listeners might remember Eddie Samila, and he was like a proper mongrel of a man, but a great player. Played for Great Britain in the second row, and he come down the slipway at the shipyard to the bay I was working in, and we'd often speak to each other. And he said, "Oh, you're signing, aren't you?" The rumor is, and like it's really strange. There was like maybe 7 or 8 thousand men worked there then, and there was a few vessels getting built. But everybody who knew this guy he's like a big superstar, like a Jim Mills who would be in Widnes. He was the same type of local person, and everybody was walking past, looking at Eddie and talking to me. And he said, I'll tell you what, to make it easy for you for your first training session, I'll meet you at the ground at the gate, and I'll take you in." You know what I mean? So, oh well, yeah, thanks, Eddie. And so I met him at the turnstiles, and you get through a turnstile to go through into the ground, and I could hear the noise down the dressing room, and we walked straight past what I didn't know was the 18 dressing room. It's into the first team dressing room, and you got to remember, I'm a kid. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So.
yeah, yeah.
And I've got my kit bag and everything else like that. And he goes, "Just wait there by the doorway." And he opened the door and he nodded me in like this. And he goes, "Ladies and gentlemen, Donny Osmond." Just like they all roared out laughing. Do you know what I mean? And he just set
Yeah.
stuff at the back of his mind to give me the banter quite early on. And of course, it stuck. That's what my nickname was for a long time
What's
until that generation had moved on. You
yeah.
know what I mean? It's so funny. Yeah, really.
Like
Yeah.
a character,
Top,
like
top
such
one.
a character, and like someone that was probably like, is obviously held in high regard by many people, mate. Just
Yeah,
taking under the wing instantly like that.
yeah,
That's what our sport does, isn't it? In
yeah,
both courts, but it tends to be what rugby does.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And yeah, I did the same in the end. Try to look after
Yeah.
people.
And then, so do you remember much about your debut, mate, and how it come about and stuff?
Yeah, I think where was it at? Oh, it was Widnes away.
But yeah,
Yeah, John
full
Mack.
circle, mate.
Yeah, yeah. So like Myler and all them lot playing in them days. So I can't
Yeah,
remember much about them. Um, huge, huge pack they had. Fred Whitfield, people like that were kicking around playing, and Burke the fullback, all them guys. Do you know what I mean? I was Tommy Bishop was the coach then, and I was on the bench, and I come off the bench to halfway through the second half, and I looked up and there's Tony Myler in front of me. Yeah.
So back then, mate, like once you were off, weren't you? There's no rolling subs, and you only had two, didn't you?
That's right. Yeah, yeah. You
Yeah.
couldn't go on and off. Yeah, you were on, mate. And so you know,
Was it?
it was tough then. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
I'd not transitioned. It was like mid-season when I'd signed. So I'd not. There was no easy way into it. I remember like one game against the Feathers. I thought I was going to die. Do you know what I mean? It was that hard. Everybody's trying to kill you. The game was that fast. I couldn't breathe. Do you know what I mean? And I'm like, and I remember the coach saying to me, just think of the game plan. I'm thinking, bloody hell, I just need to get through this. I don't know how I'm going to do it. And then a week later, I think it was working till on the Good Friday. I thought, I'd gone well here. This is great. This. I'm starting to adjust. And then I think it was Castleford at home, and I was back to fighting for my life again. Do you know what I mean? So it was really, really difficult, you know, even no matter how well I prepared, you know, the traffic and the speed of stuff was incredible. And it fluctuated like that. And then we had Leeds at home in a big game, and they had like 11 internationals, and we beat them. Do you know what I mean? And I thought, God, I had loads of time in that game, and they weren't getting peppered. And it just fluctuated like that until you found your feet, John.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's
How
hard
good's
to
that though,
pinpoint.
mate?
Mm.
Yeah.
Do you know what
Yeah.
I mean? Every single game is, you know, I can't remember where I parked my car, but I can remember that all that stuff like it was yesterday
Yeah.
because it was that, you know, how implicit it was to learn all that. But you could never put your finger on how the game was going to go. You just had to be in the right frame of mind. All right, that anything walked through the door, you had to be on your A grade game. Do you know what I mean? Because you just couldn't, you know, there's no way you could gain confidence because they'd just do a number on you. It was so unforgiving,
Yeah.
physical, and that's how it was.
Yeah. So do you know like I imagine sometimes like the headless chicken effect, mate, where
Mm,
it's just you feel static but everything's like 100 mile an hour. How
mm.
do you portray like your lads to perform under that
Yeah,
situation because you've been in it yourself?
yeah. So I try to keep it, you know. So you know, like I use lots of psychology on them. They don't know I use it, and I don't make it. I don't use the words, but I just know that you know there's an ideal performance state. Um, but it's getting them, educating them during training and preparation, and how we talk to them to start nudging towards that point. All right. So I won't
Yeah,
go in with an ideology of right, this is where you all need to be, all uniformed, you know, all thinking the same there. Well, they don't. They all access things at different in different ways, John. Do you know what I mean? So, and you've also got to think when they get to the other side of the curve that you don't want them too down in the dumps. Do you know what I mean? Psychologically, you got to think about the mindfulness and well-being. There's so much to navigate now, so they don't lose the marbles at different times. So yeah, building, you know, the slowly build up to a game, and you know, it starts on Tuesday. Training about how we need to think, how we need to play, how they're preparing themselves. You know, it's not just about turning up early to think about the game. That starts to embed itself on the Tuesday, really, about what's waiting around the corner for them. And they're no mugs. They know what the Rolls Royce clubs are. Do you know what I mean? So they know how they need to be, and then they know as well where there's a potential banana skin. And but you know, but back in them, John, you didn't get that.
And it come thick and fast, didn't it? You played midweek and everything, mate, didn't
it
you?
was just hard training,
Yeah,
some shields, do some moves. All right, there you go, Headingley. Fuck me.
yeah, yeah,
It just wasn't. There was no mental preparation. You just watched the blokes what they did. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And because they were that level, they were all that nervous. They didn't speak too much with advice. Do you know what I mean? So it's just like because
yeah,
they were getting ready for what's that typhoon that's going to
yeah,
come. So that's how it looked. But like nowadays, we try to get them into groups and start to have conversations about how they can help each other, that type of stuff, John. So it's a different
yeah,
approach now. Of
yeah,
course, there was no sports science in the 70s and 80s. It was just starting to appear in the late 80s, but now it's an integral part of coach development, isn't it?
yeah.
So,
And
uh,
it's me. And then, like we said, like you've come to learn quite early on body language,
mm,
um, mannerisms. So even though words aren't being spoke back then, when people are switched on and that, mate, don't you? Whether that's at amateur level or at the level you were at, you
yeah,
know the characters and when to leave and when to speak to them, don't you?
exactly. Yeah, yeah. I've always minded my place, and it helps me as a coach that as well. I always thought, no, let people discover me. I'm
Yeah,
going to jump all over. I can do this, that, and the other. I've always had, in the coaching team, I've always done a good job and supported everybody around me, and had faith that, they'll turn around and go, yeah, there's a job for you there. And I just feel like that.
process is right. Yeah,
Yeah, and that
yeah,
sort of, exact same approach as a coach. Like just watch, observe, get your timing right. There's always an opportunity. Someone's always going to have an opportunity for you. What do you think? How we should play? Rather than
yeah,
saying, I think we should do it this way. It's just like I always wait for that invitation and then I demonstrate my knowledge on them.
yeah.
And I've
The
always,
best people speak when needs to be spoken, don't they?
yeah, I suppose they do. It's a good
Yeah,
saying, that, John. I've never
yeah,
heard that one, but yeah, I think the same
yeah,
as when I was a young man trying to make my way in the sport. I didn't want to be inconspicuous. I knew I had to contribute, um, but I would never, I try to get a read on a room and think, no, you know,
not my time.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, a lot of time, mate, it's like the domino effect. You probably only need three talkers in your main line, don't you?
yeah,
So middle and edges. So you probably say a centre or a second row at opposite sides, and your nine or a front row or the 13, the way they play now, and your fullback's Kearney.
yeah. He is
So
now. Yeah, never used to
yeah,
be, but
and
now
then
he
the
is.
domino effect filters right through. If the man next to you speaks, three or four men next to you respond, and
Yeah,
then that fifth, sixth man can speak, can't they? And
yeah.
so on and so forth. So it's about having the right people with the right words in the right places, I suppose, mate.
Yeah. And that's where that's our next barrier, that for these reserves, that they've learnt the systems, or they haven't learnt them, I should say. They know the systems, they know they're there, but they're not speaking it, they're not sharing it with each other because they've no confidence in it yet, because they don't fully understand. So
Yeah,
this week our job is to make sure that we have conversations with them about their roles, to try and give them some confidence in being able to collaborate and nominate and talk to each other. Who've you got?
yeah.
I've got the bloke next to you, so go get him. That type of stuff. So yeah, when you
It'll
think,
come though, mate, won't it? It
yeah, it
comes.
will, it
Yeah,
will, yeah.
yeah,
Mark is a complex skill, John. You know what I mean,
yeah,
and you can't do it without chat.
yeah. No, that's it. And even if the lads have to break the game down into 10-minute segments, treat
Mm.
each 10 minute as a separate game, don't you? And see where
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
at. And
yeah.
yeah,
Tiny things like that, they'll all
yeah,
appear as we're going through the year.
yeah. And when it come to leaving Barra, then, mate, how long was you there for? And was it
Uh,
amicable? Was it?
oh yeah, yeah. So yeah, I
Yeah,
went back there. Yeah, I got a chance to go to Australia in the early '80s. Tommy Bishop, who was, Tommy Bishop was a St Helens legend, wasn't he? As
yeah,
a player and coached many teams. Well, and of course he had some time in Australia at Manly and places. And he got a job when he left Barra to coach Norths in Brisbane. And when I came out my time, I thought I'm going to give this a go. Um, I'd had a lot of first team games and got a few quid, for my bonuses.
yeah,
But so I didn't spend it. I thought I'll just put all that away for my trip to Australia. And I thought I'd only go for a summer season. So I hooked up with Tommy and he got us a bit of a go at Norths. And I couldn't get in the team, John. The standard was that high. Do you know what I mean? So I was playing down in the third grade, and then they got me a shift to Wests. And I was like, well, they're the like worst team in the competition. He goes, yes, Stuart, you were playing every week. Do you know what I mean? In a top class competition. And of course, in the Brisbane comp, then there was like Wally Lewis, legends were running around, Mel Meninga, all them guys were still running around in the competition then. So to get a run out every week with Wests was a good move. And then when it came to come home, it was like me, right up on the day, really. I just started to come good. And the lads at West were like, don't go home. We'll get you a job in the summer, through the winter, working on the rails. Don't go.
Yeah.
And I was like, what do I do here? So I stayed. I didn't come home. And
Is that your first crossroads, Stu? That?
yeah, I thought, I've
Yeah,
been at home, I had a girlfriend who was steady with, I had a job, everything to go back to, plus, the contract at Barrett. And
yeah,
I dumped it all for the experience, John. So, the pre-season training with them and up on Mount Coother and again, like, I'd never seen such good facilities. Do you know what I mean? So, a fully equipped gymnasium next to the field, training field. I was like, how clever is that? Of course, it's
yeah,
common now, but in the early 80s,
yeah.
that didn't happen.
Groundbreaking.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's what Australia looked like. And I wanted to experience all that. So throughout the 80s, I had a lot of spells with West. So I came home for a bit, went back and had a couple of
right.
seasons there. But, Western Suburbs was my club. And
Yeah,
thanks to social media, I've started to hook up with all the lads I played with. Um,
brilliant.
yeah, and it's really good. So the Walters brothers were all playing in Brisbane then, and they're
Yeah,
coaching in Brisbane now. So I've kept in touch with all them lads, Kevin Keddard and Steve, just like that, really. Them lads.
yeah. So how was that initial chat when you were staying? With Barrett okay with it, mate? Was work okay with it? Was it a
Yeah.
bit of a sabbatical type thing?
No, no, no. But like there was my job had gone. That was it. You know what I mean? But I'd come out with time. I got what I wanted out of it. Um, so that they were good. Barra knew that when I could come home, I'm with them again. And they were good as well. So I went back another season, went back again. Do you know what I mean? They were good like that. Coaches were never happy because I'd missed pre-season, I'd come late, and it's like F off into the A team, and that's
Yeah.
no problem. Just fight your way through. Challenges never ever bother me like that.
I'm gonna
Um,
say, but you were sweet with playing in the A League for a bit,
yeah,
yeah,
and then and then I'd jump off early anyway.
yeah,
Easter was getting ready back to go back. So
right, yeah.
um, had me cake and eat it a little bit, really.
What a bragger.
Yeah, it was a bit like that, really, throughout the
Yeah,
80s, John. And then when things started to disappear in Brisbane in my late 20s, because the Broncos had formed,
yeah,
okay, and it caused a lot of problems with the Brisbane comp. All the best players were signing for them. Some of them refused and went to Canberra. Belchers and Meningas and all that. And the Brisbane comp was decimated for its talent. I was injured, and in those days I couldn't have a visa because
okay.
it was for sport. So I found myself, back in England, trying to build a life for myself as a coach. That type of stuff, and that's where my coaching journey started. Really, in the late 80s, when I came back to the Lake District in Cumbria, started to plan out, what I was going to do next. And I started to study. I went to night school, and I thought I'm not going to get the tools out again. And degrees started to appear then as well. There was no, back in the 70s, there was no sports science degree or sports development degree, but then there was in the late 80s, and I thought, so I did a sports science degree at Leeds Met.
Right.
Started to think about a career after sport, and I didn't, it wasn't a plan. I never planned to do anything with my coaching. Um, that just happened by being an opportunist and networking properly and being a good person, I suppose.
Right, mate. So logistically, when you were going back into, because it's not an hour's flight, mate, is it? It's not
Oh
like you're going
no.
Dublin. How was that on the body? Because you're semi-understanding things at this
Yeah,
point, like
yeah,
scientifically, mate, to want to go down that route, aren't you? So how
yeah.
did you work on recovery and stuff from them types of flights and stuff?
Yeah, you just got to get on with it. I mean, going there was good. You could sleep all the way because you're always going into the night time. Coming back, you're always coming into the sunrise. So you come back and they are like, two 12-hour flights, with a break. So when you get back to the UK, you're just absolutely spent. Do you know what I mean? So you just literally just crash out and don't think about anything until you start to come round from a little bit because you've had no sleep for 24 hours. But after a couple of nights, you start to bounce back a little bit. It's not like you go into any altitude training and stuff like that. When I was working with Bobby Golding with France, it took us in the Alps to train at Font Romeu, and we did an interview at the hotel, and then because the lads had gone up the mountain to train at the facility, we thought we'd take the back route round and climb up the hill, and it was only a mile, John. And I'm looking at Bobby's nose bleeding. I'm looking down my nose bleeding. Do you know what I mean? So it's not like that. You know what I mean? That was savage. We got up there and we're just like covered in the French. I was like, what have you done anyway? We're just getting used to the altitude. And all we've done is walk up the side of the mountain, and it had hammered us. We just had nosebleed. Of course, to and from Australia is nothing like that. Particularly going there, you can just sleep all the way.
And like when you touched down at Norths, mate, and you were on about standards, because you've been around good standard like since you were exposed, really, Stu, haven't you? So
This was the same. It took me back to when I was a kid. I thought,
yeah,
look at all this. Look at this talent.
And was it tough going when you're not getting picked and that?
Yeah, Jeff Bagnall was the Australian scrum half at the time, playing at North. There was no way anybody was going to get past him. He'd just come back from bloody touring with the Kangaroos, and it was just every team had one of them. Even towards the back end of my career, there, Alan Langer appeared, all in the Brisbane comp, and so there was, it was never going away. Just a constant flow of fantastic players, great athletes, and what the big thing is the cool vibes how they are. They're always chilled. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas we're pumped.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're different. They're different.
Yeah.
They're pretty cool how they do it, really. And I think that's
Are you confident enough to go and pick brains at this point, mate? So when you're around them characters, was you someone that'd go and ask for tips and watch how they worked and that? Because it sounds like you're becoming a coach before you're a coach.
Yeah. Yeah, so the internationals around you all the time, and you're just learning them off them all the time about what they're doing and how they motivate themselves, and that type of stuff, really. So yeah, I'd always pick the brains, and I made some good friends there, and they looked after you. They showed you the way, and I've always done that.
Rugby's the bonus, mate, because like you said, it is about the relationships and memories in it. And if you can have a good game of rugby in between, great.
Yeah. I mean, even today, I've got the same philosophy, John. I'm like, call them back to school days. So when I go in through the day, the full timers with Kirk Haggerty and Paul Rowley and Christian Inu, I call them back to school days because I go in for a couple of days to pick up what they're doing, and mate, it's fantastic. Yeah. It's really great. It's changed so much. The coaches basically did everything back in the 70s and 80s, but Paul's got this multidisciplinary team, sports science, strength and conditioning, nutrition, everything's taken care from, some really good assistants. And then he's mastered the art of squeezing every single drop of potential out of those players. Do you know what I mean? So, that was the biggest thing at my age. Now, even though I've been coaching 30 odd years and 20 years in Super League with Leeds and Wigan and places like that, going back into places like Salford and watching these young coaches and their team and how they operate to keep those players fresh and in a good frame of mind and well humoured, and how he squeezes, like I say, every single ounce of potential out of these people is really, really good to see. And so yeah, even at my age now, John, and experience, I still like to go back to school and learn off people. And that's exactly what I've done.
Well, that's that you still get a buzz though, mate, isn't it? Like, it's amazing that you can call that your job.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, you do something you love, you never work a day in your life, do you? So it's a bit like that. And even my full-time work now is with the university. You know, I'm a senior lecturer. I'm doing lots of things. You know, I tease him a bit really, and my boss doesn't like it. And when people say to me, "What do you do, Stuart?" I said, "I just talk to young people about sport all day, and they pay me well." and um, and that, you know, so you know, it's probably the first proper job I've ever had, John, and I fell into it about 10 years ago because I like to study and do things. I was doing a master's there, and I fell into it and fell in love with it, and I've been doing it ever since. So yeah, I left full-time sport to work full-time for the university as a lecturer in sport, and part-time rugby league coach.
Yeah. So is it like is it something you like, the open floor and the conversation? Is that something you've always been a big advocate of? Ideas just bouncing.
Yeah, yeah. You know, it wasn't till, you know, like late on in my career when I started to coach, done a couple of courses. I started to, you know, I found, you know, having conversations like this, John, networking round a table, so working on national camps and things like that. And there's all these, you know, league crooks and people like that, and massively experienced coaches like Vinnie Webb, all in and around that. Paul Arkin, Bobby Golding, all those people that having conversations about how to play and what to coach
Yeah.
is really, that's rewarding as well. You know, really, you know, I had a massive appetite for chatting about stuff. Um, and then reading about it, learning about it. Is it factual? That fact check myself, go and read about it, go and research it, go and look at stuff, and things sort of evolved from there. I did a sports science degree for no other reason, John, but to be a better coach. Then I did a master's in elite coaching practice for no other reason but to be a better coach. Do you know what I mean? So that's when my life shifted a little bit. I thought, well, no, I did a teaching degree as well then, because I thought, you know, my time in professional sport is going to be limited. But I need, you know, to have a job, they'll always need teachers and educators. And I found myself now with a PhD in athletic performance, um, speaking to a variety of young people in sports, gymnasts, hockey players, cricketers. Do you know what I mean? All wanting to make the way in sport, make something of their lives. And that's what I do, you know, educate the next generation of sporting intelligence, um, and get paid well for it.
Yeah. The
It's
thing
better,
is, mate,
it's better than being out of work, you know, being a coach. And that's what
yeah,
happens when you decide to coach. That can happen.
yeah. It's you just sounds like you constantly need that challenge, mate.
Yeah, yeah.
Like you are there, but I'm getting that from you from now. I've
Mm.
known of you for a long time. Never directly met you, or not yet, but like it's just like you need a challenge around the corner all the time. The rugby's always going to be that, but
Yeah,
you need that little bit more.
yeah. I mean, it just rugby presents it all the time, you know, like the challenge at Salford. You know, it's got a very, very small budget, and we've got to try and develop players. So, you know, Robin van Peter to play Paul to improve a player is like, you know, that's another, unique skill you need. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
How you get, you know, how you can balance things to get the best out of what you've got with very little resources and things available. So there's that side of it, and then other things then that's a challenge within itself. And then work life as well. I've ended up working for the Saudi FA. How does someone from Cumbria end up working for the Saudi FA? It's mad. But
yeah,
yeah, I ended up doing some consultancy work in terms of talent development and coach development for them. So that's the first time I've ever broke out of rugby league with a huge, wealthy organisation.
yeah.
Talk about imposter syndrome. It was unreal and brilliant experience to share that. Tomorrow morning, so that was through the university. I did that, John. Do you know what I
Okay,
mean? So the
yeah,
university presenting these things to me. So that's gone really well. And tomorrow morning, I fly to the University of Belgrade with a delegation from the university to meet with the University of Belgrade to talk about designing sports courses.
right,
You know, in the University of Belgrade, they have one course that fits everything. So they don't do
yeah,
sports and sports coaching, sports psychology, and things like that. Or sport and PE. They don't do that. They have one for everything. But they've asked us to go over to see if we can help them start some courses. And the university and asked me to go to jump on the plane with us, these other delegates to go and do that for till Friday. So uh, the challenges keep presenting themselves in subtle ways, John, don't they? And I don't put myself
How
out.
good's that though, that you can have an impact on the forever of a foreign education system?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. So yeah,
It's unreal.
if it works out, I'll be designing educational programs for their learners.
Yeah.
And then I'll train the workforce to off they go and do that. So, still doing the same stuff I did as a coach, but with a broader range of sports and people, not just rugby league.
Just just mad, is it? Like you said, you could probably how did a young lad from Cumbria expect to be doing that? Well,
Yeah,
the truth is he didn't, did he?
no, dragging three little
Yeah.
sisters around,
Well, it worked, mate, didn't
getting a good hiding because they got home soaking wet through. And
it?
you know what I mean?
Yeah. So
Doing
when did the coaching come about, mate? What was the initial step that got you
Yeah,
into that?
yeah. I mean, I just saw in the paper a course advertised, and I
Yeah,
thought, I love it. Let's, and I've wanted to coach. I'm in my late 20s, early 30s, and I thought I wanted to coach, and so I saw it and got myself qualified. I didn't have a club or anything at the time. I just
yeah,
thought, well, and there's another thing as well. Like some of my friends were finishing playing and messing up big time. They were doing some like the Colts team and messing up, or they'd take a
yeah,
professional job and get sacked in 6 weeks. And I was thinking, no, let's learn the craft. So I went on a level 2, and I found it really interesting, the coaching process. And I thought, this is great. This. And then I went to the local community club and said, right, look, have you got any jobs? And they were like, well, they knew who I was because they watched me play.
yeah, yeah,
And they're like, really? Oh, great. Well, there's some under 12s, there's a ball, there's some cones, but be mindful they've had 3 coaches in a year. I'm like,
right.
oh, right, these. And then went from one disaster to another, and then got good. I knew I worked out pretty early on. I can't do this on my own. Do you know what I mean? So I started to think about what else do I need. Got the parents on board to help me run them around, so they were always on time and the discipline was good. I went to spoke to a local PE teacher, and she was brilliant about how they move and making them more healthy. Um, and my coaching journey started then. There wasn't a plan to do anything apart from just give them a brilliant experience, and then I'd take them to big games. Do you know what I mean? I'd stick them in a minibus and take them to big games, Wigan and stuff
Yeah,
like that. And so they fell in love with the sport, knew that was important. Anyway, within a couple of years, the chairman come to me and he said, have you seen these jobs for national camp? You go and you work with the best players in the country. And I goes, well, that's a great job. I haven't got a level 3. And he said, well, I've already spoke to the club because you've done that well for us. We'll pay for your level 3. And I went, really? And
yeah,
they paid me to go on a level 3, and I had to travel down to Leeds and down to Wigan from Cumbria of weekends to study and do it all, because it took a few weeks, and I got my level
yeah,
3. And in the end, I applied for a job on national camp and got an head coaching position. And that's the first time I was in charge of a group of other men.
yeah,
I'm a psychologist, a strength and conditioner. I had a group myself, and my team, I had like Danny Maguire. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean? Jamie Langley. I had a really, really good group of people. And these best 40 kids come together, and they split them into groups of 10s, and you coach them all week, and they play of an evening against each other in a small-sided game. And I'd done a couple of them then. It was going really well. And so I was like, and it paid well too. The RFL knew who I was, so I was on their radar then. And then you'll remember Mike Gregory, won't you? God rest his
yeah,
soul. Absolute
yeah.
legend of the game. Well, Mike was. I'm going to have to go back to Brisbane now. So keep
Okay.
Mike Gregory in your back pocket and feel
Yeah,
listening. We'll go back to Brisbane in the Brisbane comp. When I was playing at West, Andy Platt and Neil Holding came. Andy Platt was 17 then, came to West to play, and became really good friends with Andy. He was only 17, 18 then, just looking after him. So, you can imagine them for a summer season there, and me and Andy running around the Brisbane comp and having a good time as young men.
yeah,
We became good friends. So keep that in your back pocket now. Let's
yeah,
roll the ball forward to Mike Gregory. Park that one up. So I'm come up coaching in Cumbria, all right, just a local community club. And Andy Platt appears on the touchline. I know, it's mad, isn't it? And by that time, he'd finished playing, so he'd had his fantastic career at Wigan. He'd captained Great Britain. He'd been a man of steel. He'd been at Salford, left Salford, and took the Workington Town job.
Right.
Okay. And he was player coaching there. And he was looking for talent. And he ended up at, again, Cumbria v Lancashire, and I was coaching the young Cumbrian team. How are you doing, Stuart? We had a chat and a cup of tea. I need a good assistant. And will you do it? And I went, yeah. So I just got my first step into professional sport at Workington Town, working alongside Andy Platt, an old friend who we bonded as players with. And I suppose like my favourite saying for this is that to your listeners that like coaching, the major currency in coaching is your network. All right. And it is who you know, but they won't have anything to do with you if you mess up either. Do you know what I mean? So that's happening. And I was also doing my national camp stuff. And of course, Mike and Andy are good mates. You know, they grew up together in Wigan playing for the same. Even though one went to Warrington, one went to St Helens, they're really, really good mates. Anyway, so back to national camp. Mike's on the course and he's getting a tour planned for New Zealand and Australia. And he's obviously looking at what's happening down in the under-16s, who's coming through. And, he said, what's your group like? And I said, well, Jamie Langley's going to be a belter. You've got Rob Burrows over there, Danny Maguire, Ryan Bailey, these are all kicking around. And I was looking after them, Tommy Gallagher, to name a few, Danny Barton, who's head of youth at Salford and sort of fits in this story as well a bit later on. Anyway, the next day or a couple of days later, he comes back to Ampleforth and he says, would you want to come for a cup of tea at dinner time? Just chat about your coaching and that. And he said, like, what you're doing, why you're doing that, etc. Just like we do, grill each other as coaches, don't we? And he said, listen, Stuart, I was talking to a really, really good friend of yours last night on the phone, Andy Platt. And I said, oh, yeah, I just agreed next year to go and work with him, etc. He goes, yeah, he was saying. He said, how'd you like to come and coach with me for Great Britain Academy as assistant coach? And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, so obviously like being good to Andy helped that conversation. Do you know what I mean? So, next minute I'm working part-time with Great Britain Academy as Mike Gregory's assistant. Back to Andy Platt a little bit. And we had a good spell at Workington. And sadly, Tom Mitchell died, who was the major benefactor. I think we went about 13 or 14 unbeaten, John. We're top of the all-sector division. Andy's playing really well. Promotion's just in sight. And everything changed. Do you know what I mean? So, the board said, we can't afford to pay Evan Cochran and all these guys that money. We can't do it. And promotion disappeared. Halfway through that, Andy, I remember coming up one evening and I met him on the car park and had like a little bit of a porter cabin office. So I just jump in here. He said, listen, I'm meeting the board tonight. I can't carry on like this. I'm not prepared to drop my standards. I'm waiting to see if they back us or not. So you just go and train the lads and I'll wait outside for you when this is all finished because I'll be in there for some time. Did that. He said, come on, follow me. And we went to a local hotel in Cockermouth and he said, listen, I've resigned. I've gone. I said, I can't. They won't back us. They won't do what we want. And this is important to your listeners, John, this. That he said to me, he said, but what they want, Stuart, they want you to stay. All right. And to help carry on and everything else. And you might even find yourself with a job. And I went, nah, I came for you, mate. I'll go too. And that pays you back, John. That pays you back. Because that's the part where Mike Gregory saw what he wanted to see in me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even that helped me too, John. So yeah, off I am. We'd done France with Great Britain Academy, and then we started to prepare for the tour in 2000, late 90s, 2000. And off we go with a cracking bunch of lads to New Zealand, and we beat New Zealand junior Kiwis for the first time in history in their own backyard for over 2 tests. Aidy Gardner, Danny Maguire, James Graham, all them lads started to really kick in then. Then we flew to Australia and we lost at Wynnum, and we'd gone to Sydney to play the last game, and it was something like a point in it in the end, John. And we'd gone to Sydney to play the last game, and we were staying at the Radisson, and Gary Edrington was in there, and Dean Bell, and again Andy Platt, Mike Gregory, Dean Bell, the mates, aren't they? And then by that time I knew Dean because I'd been playing for Cameron Bell, his dad as well, and met him a couple of times. So I'm nowhere near the caliber of them as players, but I'm in that network in terms of coaching. I can hold my own coach in and around them. Anyway, chatting to them both, and Gary said to him, there's 6, 7 Leeds players on the tour. We're taking them out for dinner tonight, Stuart, just to catch up with them. Can you join us? And I said, yeah, I'll pop along. And then during the dinner, he said to me, I've got a job coming up at Leeds I'd like you to apply for. Yeah, I had the first ever head of youth at Leeds Rhinos, and there I stayed for about 11 seasons and built my professional reputation, pushing people through like Jamie Jones Buchanan, Danny Maguire, Carl Ablett, all them lads, Scott Morrell, people like that were my academy players, Jason Netherton. So dynasty of young men was then. And Smithy come and I worked as his assistant, and we cleaned up. And by that time, Dean had gone to Wigan and was on about me going to Wigan. In the end, they made me an offer I couldn't refuse. I ended up at Wigan, and in that time, I ended up coaching Great Britain Academy as well.
Yeah,
beating Australia. Then I worked with Paul Cullen with England. I coached Wales in the European nations for a spell. And then Nobby used me on the coaching staff with the British Lions. So internationally, and I'd sort of worked my way through like that. And I was at a funny place. And in the end, I remember at Wigan, I thought that was the point where I didn't get my contract renewed. I thought I need to get out of this.
Yeah.
This, it's not what I wanted. I'd turned my nose up of a couple of head coaching jobs, so that was like, I know that wasn't for me. I'm not that type of person, but I could be a world-class youth coach, and I knew which direction I wanted to go in. So that's when I studied with my teaching degree, in and around just leaving there and joining Widnes. So Widnes was really good for me because it was part-time job. Do you know what I mean? I could do my teaching degree, could develop myself, ready to leave the sport full time. All right. Yeah. Well, and I had a brilliant spell at Widnes with Paul, and we cleaned up, and then they got back into the first division, and ended up working for the Rugby Football League then for a few years as a national performance coach, and that was good before I finally made me move into university, and still coach today, like you say. Because I worked with the RFL, I was an elite coach educator in Europe, so I'd run courses in Italy and Serbia and Russia, and that's how I ended up coaching Russia and Serbia in recent years. Right. So it's hard. You can understand that there's been some significant people that give me leg up, John, but at the same time, always looking and having a drive to improve myself.
Yeah. So
I don't know if there's anything you want to unpack.
Yeah. So from an assistant coach, mate, to a head coach, regardless of the age, what are the ultimate role differences?
Yeah. Your leadership and how you manage up and how you manage down are crucial in head coaching. Now, when you're an assistant coach or a youth coach, you're just always managing down. All right. So you've got so much pressure and expectation coming down on you from the board, the sponsors, the CEO, recruitments, budgets, forecasting. And you might think, bloody hell, my stuff on the field with the players is sexy as anything. That's what I want to do. But then how you fight that off when you're getting hit with so many other things above you. And that's the thing that put me off when I looked at some of the jobs. for some of the Super League clubs. When I got a couple of good offers, I went, and I remember speaking to Malcolm Rayleigh about it, who was at Leeds at the time. And he said, speak to me before you come back. Let me know what you think. And I remember coming back and I said, oh, mate, what a setup. He said, it's nothing like this. He said, they arrive early there. The gym's dead small and the roof leaks. Then they have to drive across town to the dojo. Then they have to go back again for something to eat. Then they drive off again to go to the local club to train. And then they've got some right tossers left on the roster for next year. And he just went, stop there. Don't tell me anymore. You will never be an head coach, Stuart. I was like, hang on a minute. Your stuff on the field's great. No, because any head coach would say, bring it on. Let's have it all. And I found every single excuse in the world, John, that had nothing to do with coaching, in my view, that I'd have to try and manage. And that's what you take on as an head coach. Don't get me wrong, they get paid well, but they have a short life, don't they? And then they fight to recycle themselves. Whereas, assistant coaches generally, like I say, just manage down. You get, you share your views with the rest of the coaching team of what should happen. And then you get, if your argument's good, you get to implement it how they play. And you pass that down to the players. So, yeah, but then when you look at people that have mastered it, like Paul Rowley, who I'm really impressed with, John, social politics is really important when you come to empower. So he's got golden boot winners, Brodie Croft, and stuff like that is disposable. How we use them and access their intelligence and their contribution is brilliant. Do you know what I mean? So, to get to that point as an head coach, you have to go through the mill. So you think about what's he been coaching now, head coaching, 10, 11, 12 years. All right.
But he had to go through the Toronto thing and that, didn't he?
And always good football with very limited resources. He's really mastered what he does with that environment. My opportunities when I was getting them, I wasn't ready for that yet. Could I have done 11, 12 years? I don't know. I don't think so. But I love the sport. I love coaching and looking after young people and getting them across the line and getting them to the start line, John, is something that I've become really good at. I must sound awful to your listeners, but yeah, that's the part that I love the most.
Oh, yeah.
I've developed myself to do well and to try and be successful at. So I hope that's answered your question about the two roles. They are, even though it's the same sport, like Kirk Haggerty's now is preparing himself for head coaching and he's with a great book that's helping him to be able to do that. So it gives Aggie some sticky stuff to manage. You know what I mean? I didn't have that luxury.
You deep end sink or swim on it for you. Yeah.
When my chances would have come, that's what it looked like. Even though there were some great head coaches, Tony Smith, Paul Cullen, Paul Rowley, Mike Gregory, Darryl Powell, absolutely tremendous men. I could never do what they did. It's not my disposition, my personality. But outmanoeuvring any team and finding a way to win and coming up with strategies, no problem, mate.
It's your brew, the politics just ain't what you're a fan of at all, is it?
You have to embrace that as well and how that shifts. So it's much more complex than the other two. But the other two can be challenging and hard in terms of time and commitment that you have to put in.
Do you think Salford's that space where a coach who's willing to put up with the budget can really excel? Because Watto done a top job before Rolls, didn't he? It's like it's as if it's a breeding ground for like future international coach. That's how it fit. That's how it comes across. But they know how a team can play because, like you said, they've squeezed every bit of potential out of that team, and it performs most weeks.
And when you get, so I hope I'll give you a chance to look under the bonnet there a bit, John. That it's how Paul Rowley leads his team that does that. How he collaborates with the sports scientists, the physio, the strength and conditioning. How he orchestrates that team to be able to squeeze every ounce of potential out of that team is incredible. Do you know what I mean? So yes, if he got an opportunity at a Rolls-Royce club, you'd probably find him reaching his potential.
And it just shows the character of the man that he's not autocratic, isn't it? He's very
yeah. They're a happy
that he's
bunch.
willing to
Yeah,
take advice off people rather than say this is how it is. It's
yeah,
like, can we do it like this, isn't it?
yeah. He does. Well, why wouldn't you when you've got such quality at your
Yeah,
disposal? You know, they'll come up with stuff, and how he does that is really great. They're a happy bunch. The cool vibes around the place. Do you know what I mean? They know what they're up against, and they
yeah.
never get stressed. You know, and he's a lot to do with that.
Oh, and I think it definitely shows, mate. Like I said before, please. I'm not trying to talk down Salford. The guys at Salford have been great coming on the podcast, like yourself. Kurt's been on, Akko, Bleasy's been on, and that. It's a club going places, isn't it? And it's
Yeah,
not that they're helping people become better people. Like, look what Dicko's doing. I've no
yeah,
doubt he's tapped into you about what
yeah,
he's doing, and
exactly.
Dicko's
Yeah,
still, he's
yeah.
nowhere near the end, is he?
No, no, marvelous young man, you know, generating cutting edge information that can, you know, inform how we train and what we do with them and how we coach them. You know, I think it's fantastic. So I love it when it comes down to work with them and collect data on them. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah,
And that's the future. That's what, you know, we need. These next generation of coaches need to be looking at that.
yeah. So when you're going into the kids, then, mate. No, again, no disrespect for them. They are still kids, aren't they? And they're learning the game and that. Is it? Do they ever tap into you and what you know and ask who you can direct them to, or are they still a little bit timid and naive with that side of the game, like you said, because they're just learning?
No, they're most confident than what they used to be, John. I think because you've
Yeah,
got to give some credit to the community game now. The standards risen everywhere. You know, like 20 years ago, there was no YouTube and things are accessible and podcasts and coaching courses and CPD stuff is not available.
yeah,
So yeah, I mean, you know, the kids are really well informed now about strategies. They've all been coached well at a certain level, so you're inheriting a better player. That their expectations are higher about how they should be spoke to and the things that should be available. So, you know, there is some shy, disengaged kids. You know, they're not like I
yeah,
was. You know, mind your manners. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, they'll
yeah,
come now and say, you know, I've got a question here, shouldn't this be happening? Oh, that's a good point. Let's go and talk about it. Let's have a look at some footage. So I have no problem with that. I think it's great that it's shifted like that, John. So and they're not outspoken. They're well mannered and how they do that, but they are much more inquisitive and demanding. All right,
yeah.
because were inherited from the community game, a much more intelligent player.
Yeah. The horizon's much wider, like you said, mate, and that they haven't used that they can attack from.
Yeah.
A Verdi. So how is it when you've got to build the links with the community club? So you'll get Folly Lanes, or you'll get Langworthies, you'll get it's not Eccles anymore, mate. Salford Roosters, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so
Well,
it,
I don't really do that, but that's done well by Salford anyway. Do you know what I mean? You know, Chris Irwin, Paul Trainer, you know, Ian Blease, Paul King, and then the foundation with the Blackburns and Danny Maguire, they do an absolutely fantastic job. And I think, you know, Danny often talks about a coach called Kev, I don't know his second name, who's a retired PE teacher who does some fantastic work. So, you know, they are forward thinking, and you know they can't do enough for them, but they're also
yeah,
they realise that some things they can't do.
yeah,
But I think for all those clubs, it's an open door in terms of accessing what Salford can provide. And again, how they run the programs are probably no different from what anybody else does in their regions and environments. But it's something I always think Salford have done really well. Is reconnecting what it's got with the local community. Really, you know, they're always one of the best represented foundations that reaches out to all those marginalised groups. They do all sorts of good stuff. So that's nothing to do with me. I just like enjoy the benefits of that, like the rest of the coaching staff do, because Salford do that extremely well. You know, and they're all
yeah.
Salford
If a
lads,
kid,
aren't they? They're
yeah,
all Salford. Every single person I've mentioned there is Salford born and bred.
Salford fellas, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Well, like if a kid from Salford doesn't want to play for this Salford now, mate, you're never going to get a kid wanting to play for Salford, are you?
yeah. They must find it exciting how they play when they watch and
Yeah,
rip teams up. It's great. I
yeah,
mean, they were really unlucky at the weekend. They were just like, the big bopper.
Fine margins, isn't
Yeah,
it?
the big bopper got
Yeah,
the right play at the right end of the field at the right time in the game, and that
yeah,
was the difference. Simple as that.
yeah.
Um,
And another day it probably goes Salford's way, doesn't it? And it Leeds are saying the same, aren't they, mate?
yeah,
It's yeah. So when you're coaching at international level, mate, and you've got your team managers and you've got your assistants and you are a head coach, but you're allowed to coach and the politics are dealt with. I imagine there's nothing as good, nothing as fresh for you than to go
yeah.
out and be able to influence a group of players like that.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what it's about, really. It's about, for that team, how you orchestrate that team of experts that allows you to do the stuff that you're good at, which is how the players are going to play and how they connect and how they bond and how they become collective, and that's that collective efficacy that you give them moving into international games. Pretty good. It is a good feeling.
Yeah.
Um,
And how have you seen the game change, mate? Because certain roles, like the fullback roles, changed from
mm,
when you were playing from when I were playing back again, isn't it?
yeah.
It's
Well,
no offense to Wello, he
yeah,
was really solid under an eye ball, done everything you want a fullback to do.
mm,
And then you'd had the likes of Brent Webb, didn't you, and
yeah.
Bowen come over and do what they done.
Massive attacking threats, aren't they?
Yeah,
So as well as being great defenders and having all those attributes, you've got to have that eye for a gap to be able to support, to be able to outrun and outsprint people now. And some of them have great kicking games as well, don't they? So
yeah.
yeah, it is. When you're growing up now, it's a position that nobody wanted when I was younger, but it's a position everybody wants now.
That's just the flash
Um,
one now, isn't it? Same with the 13, I imagine, Stu. Like you've been around
mm,
probably lockers for a long time, haven't you?
yeah,
Who
and
is like
yeah,
the Andy Farrell of our time.
yeah, I mean, coaching both Kevin Sinfield and Paul Loughlin, Sean O'Loughlin was unreal. They're
Yeah,
both absolutely, cultural archetypes in different ways. Um, but yeah, Kevin's a ball player. Lockers is a ball player, but he's also, as Andy is a front rower that can throw
exactly
big
that.
players around.
Yeah,
So, they could both produce magical moments. And they both had kicking games, and they're both absolutely outstanding. And of course, I'm quite a fan of what Morgan Knowles is doing. Sculthorpe was
yeah.
outstanding. When you look at them now, so loose, you can be a loose forward, but you can be a different type of loose forward. A lot of people play with an extra prop now, don't they?
Should have said it's an extra middle. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so you're blessed when you get someone like Sean O'Loughlin that can throw props around and play football as well, a bit like Scully
yeah.
was. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I was going to say Scully done a bit of that as well, didn't he?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so that you could be a number, or you could be a Kevin Sinfield footballer, like an extra pivot. And
yeah,
Kevin was really good between Danny and Rob because they were runners of the football.
yeah,
So he had whether he'd been successful in another team without those type of players, you never know. Do you know what I
yeah.
mean? But certainly a tremendous person and a tremendous successful player in that particular era.
He come
Whereas
across like really structured, Stu, to me. So like he
mm,
allow Rob and Danny to be eyes up and play what they see. But
mm,
if that failed, Kev could step in, couldn't he, and play the
well,
structure.
yeah, put
Yeah,
set and go to a far post, put the right kick in, put the team in the right place, and then all of a sudden Rob ducks under somebody and produces a magical moment
yeah,
at Old Trafford. Do you know what I mean?
not much. Yeah,
You know what I mean? So without Kevin, they would never have been able to do that, either of them.
and vice versa, isn't it, mate? Yeah, definitely. Right. So when you're coaching foreign international sides, what sort of challenge is that? Because I imagine other than France, maybe might not have had it when you were there, but
Yeah.
I imagine the structure's not the same, mate, and the understanding's not quite the same.
Yeah. So yeah, they all lack. There is English speaking people in there, so it's like a lot of whiteboard, a lot of video stuff. Um, and then you have a translator and things like that. So it's more time consuming trying to get your message across, stuff like that. Russia
Yeah,
was extremely difficult, but there was hardly anybody that spoke Russian. And I did my best to learn out, what to name the post, the left post and the right post, where they're in the field. So I learned those key things in the short period of time that I was with them. to try and help them connect with things. But you always needed to translate lots of whiteboard, lots of video stuff to sort of validate and prove that where they need to be able to go to. So it was time consuming in meetings, but practice, if you got that right, practice went really well.
So again, you mentioned the classrooms now your pitch, isn't it?
Yeah.
And when you're going into that new environment, mate, again, because you love a challenge and you've slotted in and took on every challenge and every changing room you've ever been in and loved it as well. Was this a similar situation? Just you didn't have to put your boots on, it was the brogues.
Yeah. Well, I've never done that. I still wear shorts and trainers.
My man.
Yeah, even though they laugh at me a bit with my skinny legs now. Um, but yeah, honestly, preparation was key. When I think about, how I prepared 10 years ago, that, lots of activities, making lots of stuff, everything going off to try and get them engaged in the material, to where I'm at now in terms of being able to probe somebody's mind with dialogue and have discussions and arbitration. I do less prep now because I know the material. Do you know what I mean? I know what's waiting around the corner. I know how to stimulate a first year fresh through the door to what someone's about to leave with. In the third year, you different approaches to everything. Whereas, in the old days when I first started to teach, it was like, prepared as equally for everything, for every eventuality, and then never use it. And then after a couple of cycles, I was thinking, right, okay, I know how to get them fired up for that particular conversation about like things like developing mental skills programs for your teams. I mean, that's a really good conversation to have. And you might talk about current case studies. Do you know what I mean? Well-being's a factor at the moment, John, about players losing their minds. You know what I mean? Because when you think of that, right, that's their week. That's like bipolar. They've got no choice but to be up and down, everything they're doing. But what we're doing on the other side of the curve to keep them chilled when they're vulnerable. So straight away, you can talk about, right, there's some case studies, the Gascoignes of the world. What can we do today to prevent that happening in 10 to 20 years' time to your players? So straight away, if you're current about what you do, they get engaged in psychology. All right, and making sure that things are put in place that they're going to fortify themselves, these players, to prevent that from happening in the future. Career development, things like that. Physical development's another one. If you specialise too early, if you start playing rugby too early and that's all you do, well, research says now that that brings on dropout, fatigue, injuries. What we're doing to reduce, if someone's talented in an environment, what we're doing to stop that specialisation from happening without losing them from the sport. So, straight away, young students, young coaches become engaged in those conversations. And you just try to make the assessment process as realistic as possible, what's waiting around the corner for them. So it's not always essays they complete. They have to complete the degrees and their assignments in other ways.
No, you've just forever been a sponge, mate, and and the intellect, your vocab, your engagement, like everything's adapted right from being an earlier than planned dad, father theory.
Yeah.
You've gone through school and had to drop out. You've missed out on personal opportunity for the greater good of the family.
Yeah.
But you've been maturing and progressing all the way through, and now it's your turn to help that next generation in the classroom. Yeah,
Spot on, John.
some story, mate. So, a few daft questions for you. Oh, go on, sorry.
I've not got much time left now, John, I'm afraid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's it. I've got a few daft questions for you, mate. Any pre-match superstitions?
I never had them. I watch people have them, but I thought, it's something that never dragged me. I don't need any particular way to get changed or what boot to put on first or what music to play. I just never, for some reason, I never did it. I get why people do it. Don't get me wrong. No, not for me. I never needed anything.
Right. The toughest, the word's different for everybody, mate. Definition is very individual, but the toughest player you played with and against or coached.
It's a good one, that one, isn't it? So I think, you know, like the most inspirational player I ever coached was Sean O'Loughlin, only because he was the youngest ever Super League captain when he was at Wigan. And my spell at Wigan, the first year, they were fighting off relegation.
Or was that when you first went that the
Yeah,
fielding and yeah.
And the tougher it got, the better Sean O'Loughlin got. So he's got that Wigan, he's got the Farrell DNA, he's got the Wigan DNA. I'm really pleased to see him coaching now, because when I watch those middles, you know, like Smithers and them, they've all got Walker's DNA. And it's really good to see how good and he was just, you know, and you don't do that without being tough, John, and determined. Do you know what I mean? And physically tough, psychologically tough, and great leadership. And like I say, you know, the tougher he got, the better he got. And that was, you know, and I'm talking about someone that's not lifting trophies, you know. And off the back of that year, he found himself in the British Lions. You know what I mean? Off the back of Wigan's worst season in years, he made it right the way through. It sort of tell the real story about Sean O'Loughlin. So while he might not have been a scrapper or a brawler, if that's what people think toughness is, he wasn't. He was, you know, up there in terms of temperament, resilience, determination,
Smarts,
leadership.
everything, yeah. 8
And
out of 10 every week, really, wasn't he, mate? Minimum.
Yeah. The tougher it got, the better he got, which is a really, really good way to be, you know, for a leader. The toughest player I ever played against, honestly, people might remember him. Jimmy Thompson played at Bradford for a bit and at Featherstone. He was big, and he was like he was made out of metal. And it's like when you tackled him, it's like someone was hitting you with a poker. and it sticks out in my mind because I remember the Featherstone game and I thought I was probably going to die when it was early on. And this bloke, this massive, big bony thing just crunching me and mangling me and smashing me. You know what I mean? And you know, and the game seemed to last about 4 days. Do you know what I mean? And it just sticks out in my mind what it was like. And then, lo and behold, no matter where he went, he was the same block of granite wherever he went, and super fit, super tough. I remember speaking to Malcolm about it years later, who played with the British Lions with him, Malcolm Rayleigh. And he said what got him selected for Great Britain was when they had these county matches, and he'd walk from Featherstone, left the pit early. I think he got an early pass out from the pit in Featherstone, walked to the bus station at Leeds, got on the bus, went up to Cumbria for Yorkshire, beat everybody up, got all the way back, walked all the way back to Featherstone. By the time he'd gone back to Featherstone, the pit was opening the following morning, and went back down and did a shift. Do you know what I mean? So Malcolm said to me, you do right to be scared of him.
Well, you know that. So your favourite away ground, Stu?
They're my two standouts, really, John.
Yeah. Your favourite away ground, mate?
Oh, wow. This is a good one. There's so many good ones, all frightening places. Knowsley Road. Yeah.
Do you like them old-fashioned ground?
Yeah, I like that place. Not because the team and who they were, you know, they just brought out the best in us. Wigan was the scariest with all them people. You know, you walk out that far end, and I remember going down there with Barra in the first division I think it was on a Tuesday night. We'd had some success early on as well. I think we beat Hull KR, who'd won the competition the year before, and we had these on I think it was a Lancashire Cup game midweek, or one of them type of games. And I walked out, you know, on a Tuesday night, and there was 12,000 people there.
Madness, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't know where them days have gone.
No, that's a shame, really. So if you could tell a younger Stuart something, mate, what would it be?
Oh my God, what a great question. Yeah, if I could wind it back, what would I say? Yeah, just love your family. Keep them close. You know, nothing to do with the sport, but I know it sounds a bit melancholy, but I think things like that help you become a better person, really, John. So yeah, you know, staying close to your family and
It's your one
caring.
forever as well, isn't it, mate? It's your one
And,
constant.
yeah, listen to them when they
Yeah,
speak. You know, something
so,
probably I didn't do well.
yeah. Well, listen, mate, hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're out with people that you want to be with, mate, a few beers have been sucked in the microphones in your hand. What you got to give us?
All right. Yeah. I'll probably say we've got some good advice for you here, guys. Don't eat yellow snow.
So what's the go-to karaoke song, mate?
Or for me, I like a lot of Rod
Yeah,
Stewart. So whatever Rod Stewart, you know, whatever they've got on there that's Rod Stewart, mate, I'd be singing
have
that.
a go.
Yeah.
Class. Right, mate. I appreciate your time short on that. If you're willing to, a 1 to 13 that you played with or coached.
Right. So my best 13. Oh God, I think now. God, these are really good questions. These. So my best number one. Let's have a think. Chris Ashton. I went to rugby union. He'd be my number one. My number two, Des Drummond. My number five, Les Quirk. One of my centres would be Tony Kay. The other one would be Gene Miles. My halves would be Langer and Maguire. My front row, Jimmy Thompson. I'm going to put myself in a hooker. No, I won't do that. My favourite hooker would probably be Benny Elias. My number 10, Andy Platt, of course. My second rowers, Dave Furner and Matt Adamson, and loose forward, Sean O'Loughlin.